A couple of days ago, I talked about a friend of mine who had passed away and it's firmly believed was actually murdered. Some of you may know him by the name Marty Rifles. His real name was Martin Droll, and he died in May of this year. He was only 25. Now, most people who knew him didn't even know that he was dead. I myself was a friend, and I didn't even find out until a few days ago. He died in a boarding house in Philly, and other people who lived there were the ones who identified him, that found him dead. So the problem is that his death was very suspicious, although the authorities didn't feel that it was. If you'll recall, he was a big activist. He was part of the Korean Friendship Association. He'd been on Russia Today many times. He had a hand in Occupy Philadelphia. He traveled to different cities, talking about different issues, organizing and stuff like that. So he was really out there, and he was known. Now, he worked for the welfare agency, and for welfare in Philly, and he was collecting documents that showed corruption in the city of Philadelphia. And some of these files that he had went as far back as the 1970s. So he had a fair amount of evidence that he had collected that showed corruption in the city. Now, the police claim that he committed suicide, but all these papers that he had went missing right after he supposedly committed suicide. Some of the pages, particular pages of his journal, were also missing. He was a skilled writer. He was investigating, but for some reason there was no suicide note. In addition to this, even his camera was missing. Now, the medical examiner said that he committed suicide, but there are things that just don't add up about the story, like the fact that there was proof of forced entry. People who knew him said that he was not depressed. He didn't demonstrate any depressive tendencies at all. None whatsoever. They found a text on his phone that hadn't been sent yet that said that he was depressed and that he wanted to die, but his mother says, who he was fairly close to, said that was not his writing. That's not the way he writes. Those were clearly not his words. He didn't type it. Now, the roommates who found him in the boarding house said that they didn't hear anything, they didn't know anything, but they said he was talking about suicide for a few days. But it doesn't make any sense. But there's also some pieces of physical evidence that don't match up either. According to the photos, there's 2 pools of blood, and some evidence that suggests that he had actually been moved twice after he died. Despite the fact that he supposedly committed suicide by placing a gun in his mouth and firing upward, his jaw was broken before he died, which is extremely suspicious. That he was injured right before it happened. More than likely he was struck. Now, the police say he committed suicide with a .357 Magnum, placed it into his mouth and fired upwards, but they also describe it as having a small hole, like the bullet hole was small. And if you know anything about ammunition, a .357 Magnum does not leave a small hole. They leave gigantic holes. And this was supposedly a point-blank shot. The gun doesn't even match the injury that caused death. And according to the police, the roommate, one of the other people who lived in there, gave 2 different stories about when he found the body or something like that. He had 2 conflicting stories. When he died, he was investigating a lot of corruption that was going on. And another time the police said they couldn't find his journal, but it's right there in the police photos. Now, his mother said she went through his things and she only found 2 of his journals. There were supposedly more of them, and some of them had pages torn out, and they were written in code, and specific pages were taken, so whoever it was knew what they were looking for. Though, oddly, the police never did an autopsy. They didn't check his hand for GSR or anything like that. Now, he was on the U.S. terror watch list. He knew he was. He once went to court to testify as a character witness for somebody, and the police went in, closed the court, said that he was a terrorist on the way to do such and such thing, and this is, of course, completely ridiculous. He was connected to the KFA at the time, which is probably why they called him a terrorist. I mean, this was all a ridiculous thing. And then later the police said that he was not on the U.S. terror watch list, when he very well was, and he knew he was. You know, he was a potential whistleblower. He was on an FBI watch list, which they now deny. The FBI says that he was never on it. There's more to this story, but this is all that's available right now. What his mother is trying to do is trying to raise awareness of what has happened and try to get the word out to people so they can demand an investigation into his death, a real one. I would think even just from their own reports and what they're reporting, something is very suspicious about the way he died. And that is what we're trying to do right now, is raise awareness of this to try to push the police, or at least some authority higher than them, to do a proper investigation into his death. As it stands right now, myself, his family, and his friends do believe that he was murdered, and that he was probably onto something in his investigation. And this should definitely be looked at, because we're pretty clear he was killed for corruption that he was about to expose. Thank you for watching. Please comment and rate the video. If you liked it, hit subscribe or check out some of these other great videos. If you wish, share it on social media. While you're at it, why don't you follow me on Twitter? And if you got time, go on over to the MRN bookstore and check out some of the latest books available.